would like to say, everybody who's here, just thank you for the courage of your birth. Thank you for being born into the places that you're born into. I can name a particular kind of spiritual poverty that our culture has that I think could take the name of addiction. Addiction meaning surrendering your voice. And so in an indigenous world and in our own teachings that are buried a little bit, called Hermeticism, we choose to come into this world, and we're part of the choosing of this life. Like how we got here is we volunteered for this mission, and we're born in a culture that doesn't teach us that either our birth was an accident or somebody else did it to us. And so I kind of like to call that a cinder block to the head of forgetfulness. And so I'm pretty sure one of the reasons you were born was to try to lift this kind of surrendering of your own voice. And so it comes with a lot of grief and a lot of trouble. And so I'm asking you to bring your mind to your heart, and just, if you could just offer to the earth all the stuff that's weighing you down, your grief, your fear, what you're wearing yourself out wanting, your anger, your depression, your confusion, your pain, your sickness, anything that troubles you, and especially your despair. If you would put it down with the idea that it doesn't belong to you, that you might feel it as personal, but it's bigger than you. I'm also aware that the time period we're shifting out of the age of the fish into the age of Aquarius, which is, believe it or not, Aquarius is the age of the air. It's the water bearer, but it has to do with atmosphere. And I would like to invite you to the idea that we're working towards an atmosphere that is of the earth, that acknowledges the sacredness of all life, which other cultures still do this, but our culture has forgotten it. And I'm going to grab a little piece from the Ojibwe. The fish in their tradition, there's of their clans, which are not only of their tribe, but also international and global. One of the kinds of human beings are members of the fish clan. And so I want to read you this before I launch into the day. The people of the fish clan were teachers and scholars. They helped children develop skills and healthy spirits. They also drew on their knowledge to solve disputes between the leaders of the Crane and Loon clans. In the Ojibwe tradition, the Crane and the Loon are the two big leadership clans, the right and the left, if you will. Members of the fish clan are responsible for water ceremonies. They are also connected to star teachings. And so I guess as an introduction to this, I'd like to invite you to this hybrid space that we're standing at the crossroads of many worlds, being invited into a world where all people have their own dignity, and that would be the message of the fish. We're all mostly water anyway, right? So the kind of space we're in, where the idea that we're moving out of the age of the fish, speaking Western astrological language, and also the language of fish clan of the Ojibwe, in education since 2013, this kind of space where different cultures mingle, especially in the United States or in Canada, in Turtle Island, and the people who are of colonial origins, where they talk, it's called ethical space. So the first language I'd like to give you is that this is a class in ethical space where we're bringing the different traditions together so they can talk together and bring something new forth that's exciting and unexpected. And then the activity of leaving a colonial mindset, or leaving the Western worldview or the late modern worldview, or stepping out of the scientific worldview that has brought us to this point, that journey in scholarship is called Ethno-autobiography. And the first book on this came out in 2003, and there's a definition here for you to also put into your notes. Kramer and Patton are the main scholars right now. There are others, but the idea is that we're hybrids. That so what I'm connected to, I'm connected to the Lakota, and one of the families adopted me, and so I'm an adopted member of the Lakota, but in particular branch of the Oglala. The Lakota is that's the big group, and then there's small circles inside there. So the Oglala are one of the smaller units within the Lakota. Their medicine man named Fool's Crow said, we would like you to use our ways, but you can't become Lakota, but you can remember your ways. You can remember your traditions. So what I found is that as I've been walking this path, and the people who do walk this path, is you end up being this blended person, and you're like, there's no way. My family came here 270 years ago. Like, there's no way I'm going to become indigenous English ever. And then on my mom's side, we're Irish the last forever, and on back into the Celts. And in fact, my father's from an English family that used to hate the Catholics, and my mother's from a Catholic family who are just love Catholicism. And so I myself am a hybrid. I'm the result of two groups that used to fight each other coming together. And so we're all this, like, we're I don't know, there's a Dr. Seuss story called The Sneetches, where there's the star belly Sneetch and the plain belly Sneetch. And eventually in that story, they get confused and they don't know who is who and what's what. That's kind of our condition. We're hybrids. And this is an encouragement. It gives you a way to talk about your experiences, especially when Western science won't recognize it, or your tradition that you're from. I'm from a real traditional Catholic family, but then the 12 steps. But there's stuff in there in recovery where experiences happen that they're not able to recognize. So before we go further and enter into this, the reason this is important is because people are dying, and people are dying because there is a poverty of spiritual knowing and spiritual discernment. I've been working with veterans in pouring a sweat lodge for a group called Warriors Journey Home. And there's one vet in particular who had a hard time in Afghanistan because something happened between him and this village and this old man. And in the sweat, this old man came to visit that veteran. And there was a healing of that veteran because there was a communication that happened where peace happened. And the veteran told us that old man wants to know that I'm trying to be a better man, and I'm trying to be a man of peace and not let any of this death be in vain. He said it in his words, but that's a paraphrase for him. And then about 6 months later, he died from a drug overdose. And the poverty is in the homes, the healing that's happening in these, really everywhere, the healing that's happening, it has trouble making it home. And almost in a way, if you're a spiritual person, a dangerous place to live is in your own house and with your own family. And I'm reminding you that you were born to be some kind of teacher, some kind of bringer of new possibilities to your families. And everything I talk about today, you go home and teach it, and you bring this into your homes, because all humans have a connection to the spirit world, and they all have it's not just special people, and it's not just a long time ago. It's like right now, right here, the water of life, the spiritual experiences that make life worth living are coming in all the time, every day. The Eastern concept of Maya, we have that in our culture, and we call it unconsciousness. And the unconsciousness that we're talking about is, you can go back through the literature of the discovery of the unconscious and how it all has unfolded since basically the opening of the 20th century. So this is a quote from Joseph Campbell where he says the three powers of Maya are the obstructing power, the projecting power, but then in the end, it's the revealing power. So what you're invited to do when you really do the soul work is to move through what feels like walls and blocks and isolation that you described so well. Like I feel like I'm an alien. You move through your alienation and you realize that there's parts of you that are being projected into the world that you're participating in it. And as you call them back, the world becomes a revelation. So that revelation that you talked about, that you're walking through a world where you can feel the beauty of the water and hear the song of the cicada, and that it resonates. We have that. And I'll just give a brief description, and then we'll pause for another second before we go into the layers of the lodge. So in the early days, the way they were able to prove the unconscious exists was with the word association test. And it's a long story, but essentially they would give 100 words, and they would, as long as you could hold your attention, you would do pretty good. So they would say like black, white, red, yellow, chair, table, and they're timing how quick you can respond to that. So it turns out as you start to get tired and you start getting way down in the list, and as there's a word that triggers something in you, your response time slows down. They called that a perseverance effect. And what they were looking for in the word association test was your wrong answers or your strange answers. So you might be rolling along and they'd be say pencil, paper, plant, animal, stone. And then you'd give an answer like cowboy. And they'd say cowboy, all right. And then you'd go further, and then they might say, and what they would do is they would pull out your wrong answers. And there's another kind of answer called a clang effect, where they would say like chair, and you would say hair, like words that rhyme. So your rhyming answers, your delayed answers. And what they discovered is that our consciousness is not just the ego consciousness, but there are these, they started to call them luminosities. There are smaller, almost personalities that live within us, that when the timing is right or when something gets triggered, they can come in and cause trouble, or they participate in it. So they also found that if they checked your skin, that your skin would have a response. And not only that, they checked your breathing would have a response. So what they learned is that we are seamlessly connected to the unconscious. It's a seamless connection. If we choose, we can become conscious of the unconscious, but nobody can do that work for us. We're the ones that need to do that work of discovering what are our complexes doing, and who are they, and how do they act, and how am I connected to what's happening in my life. And the best way they found to do that was dreams. So when you're in a dream, there's all your parts. There you are among all of your smaller players, all of your complexes. And everybody dreams this way. So in the beginning, they thought to have a complex was a bad thing, but as it went forward, it turns out all humans have psychological complexes. And that was the first layer, the discovery of the unconscious. The deeper layer, the archetypal unconscious, the famous story is Jung is working in a psych ward. And one of the patients one day is looking out the window, and he says, what are you doing? He says, I'm looking at the sun. He says, you're looking at the sun? He says, yeah, well, what's going on? He says, well, there's a penis coming down from the sun. He says, a penis is coming down from the sun. He goes, yeah. And he goes, and when I turn my head, it's like that thing is moving. The sun is moving when I turn my head. And I don't know why this is, but this has something to do with the direction that the wind blows. And so Jung is taking notes, man by window, penis from sun, wind blowing. And then Jung says some weeks later, he received a text from Mithras, a ritual based on the god Mithras. And in that text was a section where there's a tube that comes down from the sun, and the person in the initiation can see that tube. And when they turn their head to the left or right, they can see that tube move. So Jung is struck, like, how come basically how come a farmer in Switzerland knows a ritual from Tarsus, Greece in the year 150? How could this be? And it was slowly over time, lots of experiences like this, that people in extreme psychological conditions have collective awareness that we're connected to all times and all places. And these can appear at any time. And this was the basis of coming up with the archetypes, that the archetypal layers of a human being are always there. And in really important times, the archetypes will show up, and how you work with them is how it's going to go down. Like, there's no magic formula. It's your work to work through this and to come to a new balance when it happens to you. So that's the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious. And then the last one is the psychoid system. What he found is that when you're in a very intense psychological time, it seems as if the whole world is participating with you. Not only animals and plants, but clocks and electricity, that somehow the human soul is connected to the earth at the organic and inorganic layers. And what this means is that all of us at all times, with these three layers, the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious, and the psychoid system, in our own psychology, we're connected to all times, all places. We're each infinitely capable of an infinite awareness. So through those layers again, the obstructed layer would be that you don't know anything about your own unconscious and how you participate in your own life. You're kind of asleep. The projection layer, you become aware that the stuff you're dealing with is also stuff that mirrors what you're conditioned psychologically. And then the revealing layer, that the earth and all life is talking to us all the time. And this can be learned. You can learn how to participate in what Joseph Campbell called a deep experience of being alive. And it's on us to decide how we do that. That's our psychology.